Gotland is Sweden's biggest island and it's a very popular tourist destination. Too popular according to many of the locals in fact, but that's because it's an absolutely gorgeous island with a lot to see and do. I decided to make a list of my top 10 things to do on Gotland. This includes many of the typical touristy things, but also a couple of more odd choices. Anyway, let's get started on this list of the top 10 things to do when you're visiting the island of Gotland. First of all, I have to mention the town of Visby. During the Middle Ages, Visby was one of the biggest cities in Sweden. The town was first mentioned around 1200 AD, but there's been human population here since 2000 BC. Visby is sometimes called a city of roses and ruins, and it's easy to see why. The town is a UNESCO World Heritage site, and there's plenty of amazing ruins in the city. And the whole city is also surrounded by a medieval wall. The Visby town wall is 3.4 kilometers long, and it stretches up 11 meters at places. It's easy to fall in love with Visby, and many people do. That's why it can get completely overcrowded with tourists in summer, especially visitors from Stockholm, since there's ferry traffic between the two cities. So if you decide to visit Visby during summer, you might find yourself struggling a little bit to find room at restaurants and pubs. But it's still well worth a visit either way, because this is a gorgeous and historical town. In 1948, 3 young kids were exploring a cave on Gotland when they discovered the entrance to a huge cavernous hall. They continued to explore the cave for many years, and in 1955 they traversed even further into the cave system using an inflatable boat. What they found is now called Lummelundagrottan, the Lummelunda Cave, and you can take tours down into the cave, using a much easier entrance than those 3 boys did. The cave has a total walkable length of 4 kilometers, so it's a huge cave system. The second longest in Sweden, actually. And if you visit the cave, you can also get a lot of information about the insane spelunking that these 3 boys did in the 40s and 50s. Something interesting about Gotland is that it basically used to be a huge coral reef at one point. Some 430 million years ago, Gotland was actually a tropical island. And that's quite visible in the Lummelunda Cave, since there's also a lot of fossils all around. There are many places called the Blue Lagoon. I can think of at least 3 or 4 places just in Sweden. And of course there's a Blue Lagoon on Gotland as well. The Blue Lagoon, like so many other blue lagoons, is an old limestone quarry that's now filled with lovely turquoise water. At the lagoon you can swim and frolic and jump off the cliffs into pretty cold water. It's also a very touristy place. Hordes of people visit it in summer. You might have a tough time finding parking if you go there in July or August. And it might not be as magical an experience as you imagine because of all the crowds. But it's still quite lovely to visit, so I'll include it in this list either way. Do you like pancakes? Trick question, everyone likes pancakes. And at the Pancake Tree north of Visby, you can make your own pancakes and have a lot of fun while doing it. You basically pay a small amount of money and then you get a skillet and pancake batter, and then you're free to go wild. There's also a playground nearby, so I guess that this place is intended for kids. But that didn't stop me from going there to make pancakes. Or at least burn pancakes, drop pancakes, and in general make a complete mess. If you have kids, I highly recommend that you drop by this place. And if you don't have kids, I still recommend that you go there. I had tons of fun just going there by myself. In the 1100s AD, the most important meeting point on Gotland was at Roma kloster, or Roma Abbey. The abbey was built in 1163, and you can still visit the ruins of the abbey today. Aside from marveling at the 900-year-old ruins, you can also visit a cafe, a glassworks, and you can get a lot of information about the history of the place. It's a lovely place to visit, especially in summer, and it's well worth a trip if you're interested in history. Especially if you want to learn more about the history of the agriculture and the monks that lived there. But I have another reason for including it in this list, and that's because you can combine it with one other item. This is namely the destination of Gotlandståget, the Gotland Train. Gotlandståget is a museum railway that's been run by enthusiasts since 1972. You can ride a steam train between Hässelby and Roma in a completely authentic setting. It might sound strange for an island to have a railway of its own, but there was a lot of produce being transported across the island. Primarily sugar beets to the sugar factory in Roma. Riding the train is completely amazing, but if that's not enough for you, you can also visit the train museum to learn all about the old steam trains of Gotland. The actual railway on Gotland lasted between 1878 and 1960, and there were a lot more tracks back then, covering a lot more of the island. This small part between Hässelby and Roma is all that remains today, but I'm really happy that I could ride that part at least. And so should you if you visit Gotland. I know that including a zoo is pretty contentious. Some people would never set foot inside a zoo, and I fully support that. But I think that Gotland's djurpark, Gotland Zoo, is a little bit different and a little bit quirky. There's a large focus on more normal farm animals, like goats and pigs, and smaller animals like rabbits and stuff like that. They do have some more exotic animals as well, like peacocks. But peacocks are sturdy animals. No one messes with a peacock. So I think that there's less risk of animals being mistreated at Gotland Zoo compared to many other places. And I love that they have stuff like alpacas and wallabies at the zoo as well. Wallabies are probably some of my favorite animals. Australians would think that I'm insane, but I just find them completely adorable. In the northeastern part of Gotland, you find another island called Fora. The name Fora means sheep island in Swedish, but it actually has nothing to do with sheep. It comes from an old word for waterway instead. The island is absolutely beautiful, and you can either drive around it or you can rent a bike and pedal your way across it. Some places to see are the sea stacks at Langhammar, including one that looks like an old man's head. And you can also visit the beach at Sudersand, which looks like something straight out of the Mediterranean and not Sweden. Or you can look at the windmills or the nature, or you can see if you can find any sheep to bother, even if the island isn't actually called Sheep Island. Oh, and sheep aren't called sheep on Gotland. They're all called lambs instead, because Gotland people are just a bit silly like that. But I thought I'd mention one place in particular on Fora as my next item on this list. Kutens Bensin is an old gas station that's also called Creperi Tati. Here you can find a lot of crepes and galettes, as would be obvious from the name. People praise the food here, and the place is extremely packed in summer. The place also looks incredibly cool in a rustic and quirky kind of way. And something you wouldn't expect to find at a creperie is a lot of old junk cars. Even if you don't come here for the food, it's definitely worth coming just to have a look at the cars and the decor in general. This is one place that surprised me quite a bit on Fora in the best possible way. Some of the items in this list are time-dependent, and you can only do them in summer. The Gotland Train only runs in summer, for example. But the final item in this list is very time-dependent, and you can only do it once per year. Ever since 1984, there's been a huge event on Gotland, and it takes place in August every year. The whole city of Visby is transformed into a medieval city filled with medieval markets, events and performances. This is Medeltidsveckan, the medieval week, and it's basically a gigantic Renaissance fair. Sort of. I've never attended a Ren fair in the US, but I imagine that it's not exactly the same as here. I think that there's a bit more focus on historical accuracy here. A little bit at least. There's a lot of performances and people are dressing up, and you can even attend a jousting tournament. If you want to enjoy some peace and quiet on the lovely island of Gotland, then maybe the medieval week isn't the perfect time to visit. But if you want to see something pretty spectacular, then this is the time to come here. And that's about it. That was my list of the top 10 things to do on the island of Gotland, Sweden's biggest island. I hope you found it slightly useful at least. Like and subscribe, but most importantly, have a great day.